Today on NewsWatch, making history in Philadelphia, Hillary Clinton officially wins the Democrat nomination. We'll detail the Dems' platform compared to the GOP's. Plus, meet the world's bravest blues musician. He's black, but he boldly sits down to talk with members of the Ku Klux Klan. See how that is changing hearts. And how a struggling businessman turned his company around by investing in people. Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Once again, Philadelphia makes history for freedom. Hillary Clinton sealed the Democratic nomination for president Tuesday night, making her the first woman to top the ticket for a major American political party. Democrats also signed off on their most liberal platform yet. Jennifer Wishon is in Philadelphia and has more.
In the same city where the framers met to craft the Constitution, Democrats made history as the first major party to nominate a woman for president.
If there are any little girls out there who stayed up late to watch, let me just say, I may become the first woman president, but one of you is next. Thank you all. I can't wait to join you in Philadelphia. Thank you.
It was Clinton's fierce primary rival, Bernie Sanders, who put her over the top, pulling a procedural move that allowed him to give her his delegates.
I move that Hillary Clinton be selected as the nominee of the Democratic Party for President of the United States.
It was an emotional day as Clinton supporters anticipated the historic moment and Sanders supporters faced reality. Sanders' brother Larry breaking down as he cast his vote.
It is with enormous pride that I cast my vote for Bernie Sanders.
Former President Bill Clinton took Democrats through his life with Hillary, telling stories about her as a wife and mother while reminding them of her credentials.
I can tell you this. If you were sitting where I'm sitting and you heard what I have heard at every dinner conversation, every lunch conversation, on every long walk, you would say, this woman has never been satisfied with the status quo in anything. She always wants to move the ball forward. That is just who she is.
They have a nominee. Now Clinton supporters hope to use the party planks to bring the Sanders faithful back into the fold.
Even though it doesn't go far enough for Bernie Sanders supporters, Democrats passed their most liberal platform in history here in Philadelphia. It stands in stark contrast to the one passed by Republicans in Cleveland last week. Here's what you need to know about the values of America's two political parties.
Of two paths for America's future, two political platforms.
It really kind of gives a roadmap for the party's principles.
On nearly every issue, there's a distinction between the Democrat and Republican parties.
We produce by far the most progressive platform in the history of the Democratic Party.
On abortion, Democrats turned their backs on 40 years of policy. They call for the repeal of the Hyde Amendment, a law signed by President Carter that prohibits the use of federal tax dollars for abortion. It's a move that alienates 1 in 3 Democrats, according to Democrats for Life. Michael Ware, a former faith advisor to President Obama, calls the move disappointing and misguided.
I think the decision the party has to make is whether we're going to continue to be an open tent, welcoming the people who disagree on such a core moral issue as the sanctity of life, or whether we're going to become a more strident, closed off, frankly less inclusive party.
On other social issues, the differences in the platforms are vast.
There's things in that platform that have never been written in there in the history of the party.
Republicans call traditional marriage the foundation for a free society and acknowledge traditional families as ideal for raising healthy kids who are less likely to get in trouble. The Democratic platform calls for expanding rights for LGBT Americans. On the environment, Democrats call for a carbon tax. Republicans oppose it.
One of the things that we thought was really amazing, even though we're here as Hillary Clinton delegates, how proud we were that you could hear and see Bernie's voice in that platform to be the most progressive platform in our lifetime that the Democratic Party has ever passed.
Bernie backers represent a growing gap between Democrats and Republicans on Israel. Even though the platforms include similar language, both parties oppose efforts to delegitimize Israel through the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. Republicans take it further, calling the BDS movement anti-Semitic, and call for legislation to stop actions that limit commercial relations with Israel. During the drafting of the Democrats' platform, debate about Israel caused so much passion, police had to wade into the audience as activists shouted down delegates. Bernie Sanders backed a measure to end the occupation of Palestinians. Liberal activists also called for the rebuilding of the Gaza Strip.
It is apparently the most progressive platform we've ever had.
Keys, a Bernie supporter, says this is only the beginning. They're leaving Philly to focus on electing the most liberal candidates they can to every office, from dog catcher to president. In this election, more than ever, Americans have a clear choice between two very different visions. It's also a time when Christians have a chance to make a major impact.
There's an anxiety in our culture. It should be the Christian voice that is not echoing the despair, but offering a voice of possibility and love and a future in Christ and a security in Christ.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News at the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia.
A Texas judge dismissed the last remaining charges against two California pro-life activists Tuesday. David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt released undercover footage of Planned Parenthood officials allegedly discussing the illegal sale of baby body parts. They were charged with tampering with government records for using fake driver's licenses when dealing with Planned Parenthood. The judge dismissed that charge at the request of the prosecutor. The ruling is a big win for pro-life activists across the country. Another deadly milestone in the ISIS war against the West, this time an attack on a French priest while he celebrated Mass in a Normandy church. Religious and political leaders around the world are condemning the atrocity and warning Christians in Europe to be on alert. Heather Sells has the story.
The Islamic State has crossed a new threshold in its war against the West. Tuesday morning, two of its followers entered a Catholic church in Normandy during Mass. They slit the throat of an elderly priest and took hostages to use as human shields. One nun narrowly escaped. He forced them to get on their knees, and they tried to defend themselves. The Reverend Jacques Hamel, an 85-year-old priest celebrating the Mass for 3 nuns and 2 parishioners, was killed. 1 parishioner was wounded. Witnesses say the attackers did a sort of sermon around the altar in Arabic. Police later shot and killed them as they rushed from the building shouting Allahu Akbar. Outside the priest's home, townspeople are remembering him. This couple said Reverend Hamel had just baptized their baby on Saturday and that they collapsed when they heard the news. Shortly after the attack, ISIS claimed responsibility. Authorities say one of the assailants was 19-year-old Adel Kermish, who grew up in the town and tried to travel to Syria twice last year. He was under house arrest on preliminary terrorism charges. The attack marks the first time that ISIS has targeted a church in the West, and world leaders have quickly condemned it.
You know, this was really a barbaric killing. And unfortunately, it took place in a sacred place.
France and the United States share a commitment to protecting religious liberty for those of all faiths, and today's violence will not shake that commitment.
In Britain, police say jihadists could target them next. They've increased security at the country's 47,000 churches. Some analysts say the attack in France was a shot directly at Christianity in the modern Western world, and it may not be the last. Heather Sells, CBN News.
As we reported, police in the United Kingdom are warning Christians to be on alert. While there are no specific threats against the Christian community, security officials have circulated detailed security advice to the country's churches. There are about 5.4 million Christians in the United Kingdom. The nation of Turkey has progressively been becoming more Islamic, and now there are concerns one of the most important buildings in Christendom, the Hagia Sophia, could again be made into a mosque. Dale Hurd has this story.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
On July 1st, the last Friday of Ramadan, the Muslim call to prayer was sung in the main sanctuary of the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. It set off alarm bells in the Christian world. This hasn't happened in more than 80 years. The great Christian basilica built by the Byzantines in the 6th century was converted into a mosque in the 15th century after Constantinople was conquered by the Ottoman army under Sultan Mehmed II.
First thing he did, by the way, after conquering Constantinople, was to go to Hagia Sophia and to take an axe and break down the Christian altar there to prove that another faith had now taken over.
This is a depiction of what the Hagia Sophia looked like before it was turned into a mosque and minarets were added. It would remain a mosque for more than 450 years under Ottoman rule. But by the early 1900s, the Ottoman Empire was dead. And in 1935, Turkey's secular leader, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, changed the Hagia Sophia from a mosque into a museum.
He wanted to bring Turkey, kicking and screaming, into the 20th century. And for that, he wanted to secularize the state.
But now Turkey is going in the opposite direction. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's party has called for a new Islamic constitution. And in May, some of his followers demanded that the Hagia Sophia be made into a mosque again. The coup attempt this month against Erdogan has not only allowed him to consolidate his power, it has energized his Muslim base.
This coup has empowered President Erdogan more than ever. He was already the most powerful political leader in Turkey since Ataturk. And Erdogan can easily use this, yes, to establish more control over Turkish society, to bring a presidential system almost tailor-made for himself with little checks and balances. So that would be the next concern.
Erdogan has long been accused of trying to revive the Ottoman Empire. And that could mean that this great cathedral might someday soon be a mosque again. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
And you can learn more about the history of the Hagia Sophia, the critical role it played in the collapse of a powerful empire, and its impact on the religious landscape of today. That link is included in this story at cbnnews.com. Coming up, changing hearts and minds. See how this blues musician is taking on white supremacists, one person at a time. A growing number of police are being killed in the line of duty. The number climbed 78% in the first half of this year compared to 2015. That is according to a new report from the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. 18 officers were shot and killed in the line of duty during this same period last year. This year, 32 officers have died in firearms-related incidents. 14 of those were ambush-style attacks, including those that recently killed officers in Dallas and Baton Rouge. Those incidents came at the height of racial unrest and protest over the recent deaths of black men at the hands of police officers in Louisiana and Missouri. The shooting suspects in those ambush attacks claimed they were angered by racism and the deaths of those two men. When it comes to talking about race in America, tensions can run high, even within the black community. There are disagreements on what's correct when it comes to approaching to heal the hurt. Caitlin Burke brings us the story of one man who's taken on the issue one man at a time.
Playing music comes as naturally as breathing for 58-year-old blues musician Daryl Davis.
Well, I've been playing music professionally full-time since 1980, when I graduated college at the age of 22.
Through music, Davis has formed some unique friendships.
That's Sam Phillips, the man who discovered Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, the boxer Joe Frazier, Dolly Parton.
And also unlikely ones.
And that was the head of the Maryland Ku Klux Klan.
How did you get to be friends with members of the KKK?
I just happened to be, in 1983, country music had made a resurgence in this country. So I was the only black guy in this country band, and consequently, the only black guy in many of the places where we played.
One place was the Silver Dollar Lounge in Frederick, Maryland. After a performance, a white man stopped Davis as he walked off the stage.
And he says, you know, I really like your all's music. And I said, thank you. I shook his hand, and I don't drink, but I went back to his table and I had a cranberry juice with him. And then he makes the remark, when the waitress brings my cranberry juice, he clinks my glass and cheers me. And he says, you know, this is the first time I ever sat down and had a drink with a black man. Well, now I'm thinking, wow, you know, what's going on here? You know, this guy's really having a night of firsts. And I said, why? And again, I was naive, and I wasn't trying to be facetious. And I said, well, why is that? He stared at the tabletop and didn't answer me. And he had a friend sitting next to him. He goes, tell him. I said, tell me. And finally he says, I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan.
Since age 10, when first confronted with the realities of racism, Davis pondered one question. How can you hate me when you don't know me? His unlikely KKK connection inspired him to start getting answers.
Some years later, I decided I was going to write a book on the Klan.
His research often put him in some dangerous situations, but it also led to an unexpected change in the relationship he shared with certain Klan members.
I would ask them questions, and they would answer the questions, but they wouldn't ask for my opinion. And then over time, you know, I would say, so what do you think about blah, blah, blah? And they would say, well, I think da, 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 da. And then they would say, well, what do you think about it, Daryl? Oh, wait a minute. All of a sudden I have value?
Davis says he's convinced 25 members of the Ku Klux Klan to leave the organization simply through friendly conversation.
And when they did so, they gave me their robes and hoods. That's just not done. You know, this uniform represents white supremacy. And you're taking it off and giving it to a black man?
As a new generation of African Americans enter adulthood, they're fighting racism their own way. Rather than trying to change one mind at a time, as Davis has done, this activist generation is using social media to reach the masses.
Some in the Black Lives Matter movement have been critical of Davis, saying he's defeating their purpose with his relational approach.
The fact that I would sit down and spend so much time with the enemy when I should be devoting my time to changing the system of white supremacy.
Davis believes this younger generation has the right intent, although their methods can taint the mission.
You need a multi-prong attack from the front, from the side, from the back, through the rear window, whatever. You don't change the system without changing the people behind the system. Okay? That's why I'm sitting down with them. And I've had success.
Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Baltimore, Maryland.
And next, meet the businessman who is not just turning a profit, he's changing people's lives. And welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. When a Colorado business owner saw his company becoming stagnant, he wasn't sure how to turn it around. But as CBN News contributor Stephanie Riggs explains, he found the solution by serving others.
L&R Pallet Company makes a simple product, but with a very important destiny. These pallets transport most of what we use every day, but they also serve an even greater purpose for second-generation business owner James Reuter.
We had a tremendous amount of turnover. We would go through years where we had 300% and 400% turnover. And that means you're hiring 6 to 10 people a week trying to staff a place. We'd reached a place in time where I felt this business couldn't grow, and it was from a staffing perspective. I couldn't see the possibility of expanding and taking on extra responsibility because we were having a hard time getting people to come to the front door. At the same time as God is working on me and tenderizing me, I decide to look at the refugee community as a possible source or a stream for employees.
From stagnation to a vibrant, thriving business that started with 7 refugees from Burma to now 81, and they are loyal, grateful employees. I think it's safe to say this pallet company has a new purpose. It's people.
What we decided to do by pouring into the people actually turned out to show up on the bottom line. Not only did our culture change, but profitability changed. It was a moment in time where I felt God kissed me on the forehead as a child of his and just said, silly little boy, that didn't just happen. You know, this isn't coincidence. I have my hand on you and there's a plan. And it was very exciting to start to see my relationship with him work that way.
L&R Pallet Company evolved into this factory of hope, filled with self-reliant, confident men and women who otherwise would be living in poverty.
I have been here about 1 year.
I think about the opportunity. The boss, they give us an opportunity. They let us people from Burma, so I love that. They pay a good money, so they give a good job. It's a good boss.
A lot of times business owners want you to leave your problems at home, give you a hard day's work, and leave. And I used to be that way. But now we actually encourage them to bring your problems and what don't you understand? What are you confused about? We bring in lenders and help them improve their credit, understand how to establish credit. We're helping them buy homes by getting them involved in the affordable housing programs here in Colorado. We are fumigating their houses for them because they're in low-income areas where they've got different kinds of bugs and stuff. And these are ministry opportunities for us to go in and do something.
So he take care about us, people from refugee camp, so we love him. I think about I'm working here for 30 years, maybe more than that.
What I started to do is pray to the owner of this company and say, Lord, bring to my company who you want to work here, who you want to have refuge. I feel very blessed that the Burmese people have been introduced into my company, and I can go right outside my office door and impact families and lives and make a difference.
Reuter's father started this business in 1974. He had no idea it would become a place of refuge, producing more than these pallets, but people with hope. I'm Stephanie Riggs for CBN News in Denver.
Mission in the marketplace. So nice to see Christ at work. Stay with us. We're coming back with more of CBN NewsWatch. And finally, we have a word for your Wednesday. We hope it will motivate you. Remember this, if you've already begun a relationship with your Heavenly Father, you are living a life story that God has already written. No matter what chapter you may be walking through in this moment, there is victory at the end of your great story. So keep pressing forward until His written promises are a living reality. With that word, make this a wonderful Wednesday. And that is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. We'd love to hear what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you join us again right here next time. Make this a wonderful Wednesday. We'll see you right back here come tomorrow.